Hi everybody, in this video I'm going to talk about this beast right here. This is a Mercury, it's brand new 2022 Pro XS. It's a 250 with a 4-stroke and it's a V8. So in this video what I'm going to do is talk about the break-in period, how you go about that. I've heard different things from different people, so I'll tell you what's in the owner's manual, and then I'll also tell you what my dealer and mechanic told me to do as well, which is just a little different. In addition to that, at the end of the 10-hour break-in period, you're supposed to change the oil, and then you're also supposed to change the lower unit gear oil as well. And the reason for that would be during that break-in period, there can be some little metal shavings and whatnot from the pistons and things moving around, and you just want to clean that out. Typically, you're going to be changing your oil, both oils, once a year. Probably at the end of the season for most people, or maybe at the very beginning. But that first 10 hours is critical for the life of this motor and how it's going to function and its productivity and everything else. So stay tuned and we'll go through this and talk exactly about how to do it. And I'll follow that up with the lower unit oil as well. Alright, so on page 54 in the owner's manual, it tells you as far as break-in procedures, and it's got two directions. That's it, very quick and easy. It says, for the first 2 hours, run the engine at varied throttle settings up to 4,500 RPMs, and then at 3/4 and at full throttle for approximately 1 minute every 10 minutes. So that's what I did. I took it out to a big river that's near me so I could just run, and I kept varying the RPMs about every 2 minutes, 3 minutes, anywhere from 3,000 up to 4,500. I did a few of them down below 3,000, but mainly it was between 3,000 and 4,500. And then I had a timer, so every 10 minutes I would ease up the throttle. I didn't bang it down, I'd ease it up and get it up to, not to full throttle, but I'd say 3/4 throttle, and I'd keep it there for about a minute and then I'd back it back off. Now I was told at the dealer to keep the motor trimmed down during those first 2 hours, and then also if you have a jack plate, keep that all the way down. And I'm guessing it has to do with keeping the fluid levels operating properly and whatnot. So for the first hour I did that, and then it says then the second hour, I did give it a little bit more juice, but I kept varying the throttle, and I never went to full speed again, and I kept it trimmed all the way down. And then step 2 in the owner's manual says for the next 8 hours, avoid continuous operation at full throttle for more than 5 minutes at a time. In other words, you can pretty much run the motor as you normally would, just don't go full throttle, and if you do, keep it to less than 5 minutes. So I'm a little bit over 10 hours now. You can see I'm at 13 hours right there. I did go a little over again. I was at a tournament, but again, I was never going more than 35 miles an hour. And during that time, I took it up to full throttle once because I was on a smallish lake, and I ran out of lake because I was going too fast. I also did fish a tournament. I'm a coach for a high school group, but the speed limit was 35 miles an hour on that lake, so I never went over 35 miles an hour. So at this point, now that I've got 10 hours in, they recommend that you change the oil because there could be some little metal shavings and things in there, and then same with your lower unit gear lube, you should change that as well. Once that's done, then you only do those things once a year, but this first time out, you're supposed to do it after 10 hours. So what are you going to need for this process? For the oil change, you're going to need some kind of a bin to store the oil in, so I'm going to use this. You're going to need some kind of a hosing. This is a 5/8 by 2, and this will fit right over the nozzle, and I'll show you how that works. This is too much, so I'll have to cut this down. You're going to need the oil, and so 10W30 blend is what's recommended for the 4-stroke. You're going to need an oil filter that fits your motor. You might need a wrench to get that oil filter on. You're going to need a screwdriver, and then you need the gear lube. This is for the lower unit, and that's what the screwdriver is for as well. And so I'll show you how all this works. Oh, I'm sorry. And then also you need some kind of a bin for collecting the lower unit. I won't be able to put it into a big container like this because it'll be too high. And so you need that to drip down into something lower that I can then transfer that oil into that bin. So that's what you need, not a lot of tools. All right, I let that sit above vertical for probably 2 or 3 minutes because it's kind of cool. It's only 50 degrees, rainy day today, and so the oil is going to move a little slower than it would be if it were a 90-degree day. So I let it sit a couple minutes, and now I've brought it back down. And the next thing on the, again, page 97, is to use a 16 millimeter or 5/8 inch wrench. So that's a piece of equipment that I didn't show you, I didn't anticipate, but you're going to need a deep one in order to fit over this nozzle right here. Now, I don't know how well you can see it, but there's a nozzle sticking out about 3/4 of an inch, and then you got a 5/8 nut. And it says to loosen that just enough so that it can be moved by hand, and I've already done that. And it says not to loosen it enough that the oil will start to drip out. Next, you're going to put on your tubing. It does say in the manual that you want a 12 millimeter or 7/16 inside diameter. So this one is not 7/16, but it's very close and it fits on there nice and tight, so really snug. And so I've trimmed some of this off so that I can allow the oil to drip into my pan right here. And I didn't want too long of a hose, so I cut it at roughly 20 inches. Okay, it says important, do not loosen the drain valve more than 2.5 turns. The oil seal could get damaged beyond 2.5 turns. So now it says loosen the drain valve 2.5 turns to allow the oil to drain. Do not exceed 2.5 turns. So I'm going to do that right now. I am going to adjust the camera just a little bit so you can see my oil collection. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn this just using the hose. So there's one, and it's starting to drain. So I'm just going to do the one turn. And this holds 6.6 liters. And one of those big jugs is a little over 3. I think it's 3.78 liters. So this is going to take a little while to drain. So obviously I'm not going to have you watch this, so you can come back and check it out when it's done. And this is exactly why you want to do this after 10 hours. I don't know how well you guys can see this, but there's some white stuff dripping down. So the oil change is basically done, or the oil bleeding is basically done, but there's a lot of little deposits in here, and I'm not sure exactly what that is. I'm not a mechanic, but I know you probably don't want that within the crankcase. So it doesn't look like metal shavings at all, but it's little white particles. And so even though this is basically done, I'm going to let this continue to drip for about, I don't know, I'll give it another 30 minutes. It's just slowly coming out. So I'm just going to let that continue. All right, so while that oil is changing, you can take the cowling off. I'm not going to do anything besides take the cowling off. Again, I'm going to let that keep dripping for about a half an hour. So these are kind of unique. I'm just going to push right here, and it opens up, and there's a little red button. And that's going to release this handle. Once I release the handle, I'm good to lift it up. Now you're going to want to bring this up nice and slowly. Making sure not to rub it on the sides or anything where I might pull a wire with the cowling. And that's how you get it off. And right here is the dipstick. And this is where we're going to put the oil in, which we'll get to in a minute. Okay, so on the drain, after it was done, I removed the hose. I hand tightened that nut back, and then I took my ratchet and just tightened it until it was snug. You don't want to over tighten that, you can do some serious damage. So now we're on the port side of the motor, and we got the oil filter right here, and then they've got this drain plug. Let me grab what they say. So it says remove the plug from the oil trough and attach the same size hose to drain any oil that might be in here. So as I unscrew this, I'm assuming that a little bit of oil could likely leak out. Okay, so I've attached the hose, and there's really not much coming out. In fact, I think what's coming out of here is the residue from oil that was in this tube from the other side. But it says to put that on there, and then what I'm going to do is remove the old filter by turning counterclockwise. I'm going to see if I can do this by hand. No, I am going to need the tool, so I will use the tool to loosen this. Alright, so now I'm going to remove this oil filter, and this is a standard for a vehicle. So what I'm going to do is just put a rag around here to create a little more surface area on the cylinder. And let's see. I can't tell if it's loosening or if that's the rag. I think it's the rag. Nope. So what you have to do is just kind of wedge this in there, tight it in, and slowly loosen it. It is starting to come, and now I think I can get it by my hands. There's not a lot of room to work, that's for sure. Alright, so now we'll see if some more oil drips out through this hose. So far nothing more has come out. So I think by letting it drain for a good half hour, it helped to drain it from the filter as well. Okay, a little bit did come out there, so I'm going to put this in the bucket. I'm going to take a rag and kind of clean up some of what's spilled out. And I can see what they're talking about with the trough. There is a trough here that leads to this hose. So what just spilled out is now coming out through the hose. So that's why they want you to put this hose on, is once you release the oil filter. Okay, once you have the oil filter off, it's time to put the new one on. Now, depending on your model of Mercury, you might need a different filter than this one. This is what I need for the Pro XS. This is a 4-stroke. It's a 8-cylinder 250. All right, so what you want to do is get some fresh oil right on this gasket, get it nice and put it on there. Put this down over here. Alright, and then you just want to make sure you don't cross thread it, which is kind of hard to do because it's metal on metal, so you shouldn't have a problem. It should go on pretty easily. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is get this to hand tight. If you remember, when I took it off, it was tighter than hand tight, so I could not get it off with just my hands. So I'm going to go to hand tight right there, and then I'm going to go a little tighter. So again, what I'm going to do is use the rag method and put that on there. Oh, wrong way. And just try to tighten it a little bit more. Again, you might be able to find a wrench that's the exact size, but this one seems to be sliding. I'm not getting a good grip on it, but I want to be a little bit tighter than what I am right now. So let's double it over again and try this one more time. Here we go. There we go. And so that tightened it just a little bit more. Okay, we should be good to go. Now the only thing left is to do the lower unit, which I'll show you here in a second. Okay, so what's next now is to put in the oil. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'll reset the camera so we're up top, and we're going to put it in. Okay, so before you put the oil in right here, you want to need to know your capacity. So the capacity is 6.6 liters for mine, which comes with 7 US quarts. And this right here is 3.78 liters or 1 US gallon. So basically it's going to take a full one of these plus another maybe 2/3 of the other one. So I'll start pouring this in and show you how this works. All right, so I put in a gallon and then maybe half. And so this dipstick, now this is one of the longest dipsticks I've ever seen. Very, very long dipstick, but it's kind of neat. So I'm gonna wipe it off. Then I'll show you how these little beads work down here on the bottom portion of it. Basically, if you've got anything within these beads, you're in good shape. If it's below this last bead, you need to fill more, but I'll show you how this works. So it's a little tricky to get in because you don't have the it's too flexible, so you have to just feed it in like so. It's not like a typical dipstick that's kind of a tough material that doesn't bend too much. Okay, so it's down in there. So now I'll bring it up. And the way the beads work, if you tip this sideways, you should see some little dripping start to appear, which they're not, which tells me that I still need to put more oil in. So let's go with some more. All right, we're going to give this a go. So now I take the dipstick, put it in, get it all the way in there, and pull back out. And let's see if we see anything. I can see this bottom one. Whoop. This one has some on it. And there's a little bit on this one, but not these, so I barely have enough. So I need to put a little more in. Okay, now it's kind of guesswork. I don't want to put too much. Let's try that. Now I turn this sideways, stripping from the first two. The third one, I still need a little more. And so that's how the dipstick works. So you'll just keep adjusting it until you get it full. And then just carefully put the cowling back on, and then this lever is going to lock it down. You just push the red button on the lever. That locks it. It made noise. It's not moving. And then I just close it and you're all set. Now it's time to do the lower unit. All right, so what you're going to need for this, you're going to need something to collect the oil, and the pan that I use for the actual oil change wouldn't work because it's going to have to fit under this. Now I've got this trimmed all the way down, and I can probably get it done this way, but what I'm going to do, I have an Atlas jack plate, and I'm going to lift up the jack plate, and that'll give me much more room, and I can get this underneath there, and I can actually trim it down because that'll angle this and get more oil out. The other things you're going to need is some gear lube. This is the Mercury SAE 90. I bought the kit, so I came with a little pump. You won't have to buy this again once you buy the kit. You're just going to need a flathead screwdriver, and then you're going to need some way to get the prop off. This is a 1 1/16 size, so if you don't have an actual prop wrench, then you just need a socket that's that size, and then a block of wood. So I'm going to show you how I go about this, and we'll trim up that jack plate right now. Alright, so with the jack plate all the way up, and then I trim the motor up just so it's easier for me to get to, but I will need to lower it down. I need to get this nut off. So the purpose of the 2x4 is so when I go to loosen this, the propeller is just going to spin, and if I don't have that block of wood, I'm having to hold this with my hands, and these stainless steel props can be kind of sharp, and that would be dangerous. So I'll put this block of wood in here, and I just got to break it loose. It's on there pretty tight. I may have to use an actual socket with a longer handle to get enough torque to get that started. Okay, I finally fought this and got this loose on my own, but man, was it tight. In fact, it's still tight. There we go. Okay, once you get that nut off, there's a couple washers, and it's critical, there's 3 of them here, and it's critical that they go on the same way. So what I like to do is lay them down in that same order, and in whatever system you use, so you don't forget, I'm going to put these down, and then that way they're going to go on the correct way as well. Okay, the prop just comes off just like that. Again, make sure you put it on the same way. That should be pretty obvious. And then I'm going to bring the camera in here close, but we've got 2 screws here, one here and one here. And what you're going to do is loosen the lower one first, take it all the way out, and then you're going to loosen the top one, and that oil is going to start to drain. If I were to loosen the top one first and then start loosening the bottom one, I'm going to get oil coming out immediately as I'm trying to get that screw out or nut out, whereas it kind of creates a vacuum if you take the bottom one out first and then the top one. So I'm going to bring the camera in close, and then I am going to have to lower this down and get this bucket under there to collect the oil. So we'll change the angle here in a second. see, by lifting the jack plate up, I now have the motor tilted all the way down, and that's going to create an angle for more oil to drip out. I'm actually going to bring it back up when I take out the first screw, so I don't lose too much oil. Just so it's a little bit beyond 90 degrees, and then I'll lower it once I get that other screw out. Okay, so here's the first screw, so I'm going to take that out. Now behind it there's going to be a washer, and you want to make sure that doesn't fall out and you lose it. And I've on occasion dropped it into the bucket, so you don't want to do that, especially if there's oil in there. So the washer did not come off with it. It appears that it did, but there's a little washer back in here that, there we go. It was kind of stuck on there, but I like to take that out because I don't want the oil to push it into the pan and then you got to dig it out of there, or you may forget about it and you don't even have the washer when you go to put it back together. Okay, so now this top one I'm just going to loosen a bit. Okay, and there's no oil dripping yet, so now what I'm going to do is lower the motor back down, and I'll pull that out and we should get the oil draining out, and it's not going to run all over my hands. Okay, so get down here real low and start pulling the second one out. It should start running pretty soon. And when this starts running, you're going to want to let it probably go for a good half hour. Again, I've got kind of a cool day here, so it's not real hot. If you had a 90-degree day, it'll drip out of there a lot faster. Now I'm surprised there's nothing dripping out yet, but we should see it once I get this screw all the way out. Here comes some, and there it goes. You can see this is pretty black, and the oil when you put it in isn't that dark. This is darker than the motor oil that you typically use. It's kind of a little bit of a bluish tinge to it. So we're going to let this drip, like I said, probably a good half hour. So we'll be back in a little bit. All right, so I let this drip for a good half hour, maybe 45 minutes, and it looks like it's done. I do need to clean up the skeg, so I'm going to pull this up a little bit, and right now it's touching the oil. So let's bring it up. Okay, so that gives me room now to work. And so first I'm going to clean where it was dripping out of. Oh, and there, I just got my towel into the, put that in my pan. And yeah, so just a little bit of cleanup. Not a big deal. Okay, so now, once you have that cleaned up, you're going to insert the nozzle of this little pump. Now, this does come with a stop on here, so I need to take that off. And it's threaded, and there's a little wing nuts type of thing. The problem is this entire hose is going to twist. So you can see you can pull this right out, and that's going to make it a lot easier to thread this on and not have to fight this container while I'm threading this on like I was just doing there. So give me a second to Get this threaded in there. It doesn't seem to match up the threads real well at all, but I can feel with my finger that it's in as far as it can go. So we're just going to go with this. Put our hands up a little bit, and at that point you're just going to start pumping. Now the only thing I would do is watch right down here to make sure that it's not squirting out. If so, you may have to hold it in with your hand. So you're going to see kind of this bluish color is quite a different color than what came out. It was much darker. What came out was a very deep navy blue. This is more of a turquoise. And I'm just going to keep pumping until I see a little bit of oil come out that top hole. And at that point, once it comes out the top hole, you have to put that screw in. So bear with me, and we'll see when this comes through. Alright, so that's starting to come through, and it's kicked out some air bubbles. So now I'm going to get the screw on. I'm just going to put a little additional squeeze in there. Just going to put a little additional squeeze in and tighten that up. You can see I had a little problem with the hose popped off right here, so I got a little bit of cleanup to do. And what you want to do is get this top screw in nice and tight first before I pull this nozzle out to start to create a vacuum. You do want to have that other screw ready to go. So that's tight. Gotta locate the other screw. At this point, I'm going to trim the motor up a little more. The reason why I trimmed that up is now I got more of an angle, and there's less likelihood of much that will drip out. This is certainly probably an easier job with two people. Just because there's a little bit of speed involved to get that second screw in. But I lost a little bit of oil, but not much. Okay, so I've got those on nice and tight. So the only thing left is to do a little more cleanup and get rid of my oil. But other than that, I'm totally done, and that's what you need to do to break in your motor. The first 10 hours, you got 2 changes of oil to do. Be easy on your motor. Don't be zooming it up into full speed. And then the rest of the life of this motor should be good. Hope this helps you. Thanks for watching.